Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm Mayor of Washington, D.C., and I'm joined today by the Chairman of the Council. I'm joined by our Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, our Attorney General Carl Racine, and members of the Council of the District of Columbia. We want to thank you for being with us to celebrate budget autonomy over our local funds. We want to thank Congresswoman Norton for her fierce advocacy for all that she does on behalf of Washington, D.C. We also want to recognize the Council for their efforts for budget autonomy. And I want to thank Carl Racine for standing with us this afternoon to defend what the voters of the District of Columbia went to the polls and voted for. Today, the House Government Oversight Committee will mark up a bill. Members of Congress will vote on H.R. 5233, clarifying congressional intent and providing for D.C. Home Rule Act of 2016. The bill's sole purpose is to strike down the will of our local council, our legislators, and more importantly, the will of D.C. residents. D.C. residents overwhelmingly voted for budget autonomy in 2012. The bill being considered today would limit the district's ability to manage our own finances. The courts have spoken too. Be very clear. Budget autonomy is the law of the land. If this bill is voted out of committee today, it will likely move to the House floor, where members of Congress from across the country will get to vote on it. There will be a critical vote missing, a critical voice missing, and that is that of district residents. Washington, D.C., unlike our friends on the Hill, we passed a balanced budget for 20 straight years. We have strong bond ratings. We are adding a net 1,000 people per month. Our residents paid over $26 billion in federal income taxes in 2014, more than 22 other states. Our house is in order. Yet, we have zero voting representation in the Congress. Our Congresswoman gets things done for us, but imagine what she could do with a vote. And imagine how we could be served by 2 senators. Washingtonians deserve better. We urge the Congress to focus on the pressing issues that they should be responsible for: investments in infrastructure and improving economic opportunities for all Americans. Their constituents sent them to Congress to work on those issues, not to meddle in the District of Columbia. They have plenty of important work to do, as do we. This is yet another example of why we must become the 51st state. Otherwise, we're going to keep having this battle. Statehood means that our residents' voices will not be silenced. So we want you to join us in our efforts to talk about statehood at statehood.dc.gov. And now I would like to invite the chairman.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I agree completely with the comments that the mayor just made. Each of us who's going to speak today is going to speak from a slightly different perspective. The point of today's press conference is to make it clear to the Congress that what they are about to do is irresponsible with regard to the district. And it is also contrary to the many members' stated principles. But I want to say that this issue today is not simply about statehood or about home rule, nor, I would say, is it about what the intent was of Congress in 1973. As I said last week when I testified to the subcommittee, which I'm not sure was sincerely interested in all of the testimony, it seemed to be more a predicate for today's vote. What I said was that the issue is not what the intent was 43 years ago. It is, what does Congress support today? And we need to be clear about that and make that point over and over again. Does the Congress support budget autonomy for the District of Columbia? And this has been a bipartisan issue. There have been Republicans and Democrats who have supported budget autonomy for the district over the years. Tom Davis, Darrell Issa, President Bush, as well as our Democratic friends in Congress. The point I tried to make last week and I want to make today is that budget autonomy helps the district. It saves us money. It saves the government of the District of Columbia money. It also improves our ability to fiscally manage our affairs. Budget autonomy is a good thing. It's not just about statehood or self-determination or home rule. It's about being able to manage a better government more efficiently and at less cost. Congress's insistence to keep the budget, to keep complete exclusive authority over the budget, is not matched by their actions. They have not made a single change to a single penny in our local funds in over 10 years, not since the control board. And they have failed to approve our budget on time since 1996. This is something that they are seemingly wanting to hold on to, but they do nothing with it, except to hurt the district. In fact, because of the unreliability and inconsistency of approving our appropriations or approving them on time, or whether there will be a government shutdown, it actually hurts our ratings on Wall Street and therefore increases the costs of government. Congress loses nothing by stepping aside and allowing budget autonomy to continue. They still have plenary authority. They can still have those obnoxious riders on the federal appropriation for the district. I want to conclude with this. Today's action, if the House subcommittee goes through with this, is sad. Today's action is sad because it gains nothing. It gains nothing for Congress. It gains nothing for the district, and it's a mere power play. Let me recognize our elected Attorney General, Carl Racine.
So I wanted to invite the Attorney General up so that he is somebody else is not telling other people what our Attorney General thinks. And I think it speaks volumes of his willingness to defend the voters of the District of Columbia. And we have to be clear that we have fought this battle first at the polls, and then it has been upheld in a court of law. So I don't want anybody to confuse what the Congress can do. It would be political. It wouldn't be a legal question. And so I'm happy to introduce our lawyer, our Attorney General, Carl Racine.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, Congresswoman Norton, Chairman Mendelson, and members of the council. I can't tell you how pleased and proud the Office of Attorney General is to stand by all of you today on this fight for budget autonomy. Now, look, we know that the Office of Attorney General, prior Attorney General Irv Nathan, and certainly under my tenure, had a different legal interpretation of the Budget Autonomy Act. Well, when folks have a different legal view, what do in America? They go to court. They go to court and they litigate zealously and they fight hard, but they do it professionally. And in that regard, I want to really commend the chairman as well as the mayor and how they have always sought to litigate this matter zealously, but fairly and professionally, courteously. Well, here we go now. We have a judicial decision from a competent court of jurisdiction. And our CFO, OAG's client, has recognized that decision and made what I think is the right decision to not appeal that call. As Mayor Bowser indicated, therefore, budget autonomy is the law of the land, and it absolutely is the right thing, as the will of the people has been repeatedly demonstrated, most emphatically, of course, in the overwhelming passage of the referendum. I have seen discussion about an Anti-Deficiency Act, potential violation, and some threat of possible action against employees of the District of Columbia if they act pursuant to the judicial decision. Well, I can tell you from a position of law Anyone who acts consistent with that Superior Court judgment, and indeed it is an injunction that requires the District of Columbia to proceed pursuant to the Local Budget Autonomy Act, is acting consistent with law. My job is to focus on law, not policy, although I'll note that I completely and totally agree with the policy arguments in favor of budget autonomy, as were well articulated during last week's hearing and today by the mayor and the chairman, and as I'm sure our Congresswoman will do when I leave this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl. So I wanted that to be perfectly clear where we stand in the law, and certainly where we stand with the operations of D.C. government pursuant to that court ruling. Now it brings me great pleasure to bring our Congresswoman to the podium, who knows all the ins and outs of what's happening up there and is helping certainly navigate the best way through it so the will of the residents of the District of Columbia is upheld. Congresswoman Norton.
Bowser. Thank you very much, Mayor Bowser. You have just heard from the only officials who have any legitimate right to say anything about the local funds of the District of Columbia. They raise those funds from residents and from businesses. They raise them without any assistance, I must tell you, from the Congress of the United States or from the federal government. So you've heard from the right people. I do, however, want to thank Chairman Mendelson for pausing his first reading and his first votes on the 2017 budget, which is what is going to be at issue in the Congress. And I certainly want to thank Mayor Bowser, who is also strongly involved in the work upstairs for the District of Columbia budget. And of course, our work would be incomplete without our Attorney General. His legal work on budget autonomy, I think, cements the city's position on the 2013 budget autonomy referendum. I come to our own City Hall because it is the only place where we ought to be discussing our own budget and certainly maintaining the budget autonomy referendum. I regard this as a historic day for two reasons. First, it is the first time that the city has adopted its local budget without any intention of submitting that budget to the House and Senate appropriation process. But it is also historic, I must tell you, because almost simultaneously, indeed at 2 p.m., 1 hour from now, a House committee will vote to overturn the District of Columbia referendum approved by 80% of the voters. To be sure, I do not believe the Senate will take up this bill. That is not to say that the budget autonomy measure is not in danger. Indeed, the reason I say with some confidence that the Senate won't take up this bill is from a cue from Chairman Chaffetz himself. I know the Senate have been over there, and I see no work being done in the Senate to take up the bill. But Chairman Chaffetz must know it because he has already asked the Appropriation Committee to attach what the committee does today to the 2017 appropriation, assuming that the Appropriation Committee can get a hold of it. And if they can't, then the Congress can, of course, find some other way, perhaps, to do so. Yet, as you have heard, what the district is doing here today is perfectly legal and constitutional. The district is pursuing its work upstairs under court order. The court has mandated that it carry out the will of the people in the 2013 budget autonomy referendum. And it's interesting to note that two chairmen of this very same committee have said openly, one in court papers, that budget autonomy, that the district should have autonomy over its own local funds. One was a former chairman and Congressman Tom Davis, and the other is presently still a member of the Congress, Darrell Issa. I believe that both members, both chairmen, reached their conclusion as a matter of principle. They also know something, and they ought to, something that you ought to know, that congressional power remains intact even if the district has budget autonomy. My friends, I'm sad to report, this is not statehood. That's why we still must go for statehood for the District of Columbia. And that's why I applaud Mayor Bowser for her initiative for the district to petition for statehood using the Tennessee plan. So Congress's authority remains intact to change the district's budget at any time. But as Chairman Mendelson says, it doesn't even bother with the budget. It never even looks at the budget. We never even have hearings, as we did when I first came to Congress, on the budget. They don't care about the budget. If they care about attaching things to the budget, as they, of course, do routinely, of course, there are 1,000 ways to do that without holding up our own local budget and interfering with the operations of local government. This is quite a redundant process. The mayor and the city council pass the budget. Then we've got to go to the Congress and get the Congress to do the same thing. This is what costs us money. It costs us money, Chairman alluded to it, to borrow, because Congress looks at this redundant process and says we don't know what's going to happen in the federal process. So we attach a penalty to districts borrowing. You would think that that's one thing that a Republican Congress would not want to do, to add to costs. Congress doesn't need our local government before it can make changes, should it decide to do so. And please remember this, your home rule is delegated. The Congress retains the authority to wipe out your entire home rule. They only delegated home rule in 1973 to the District of Columbia. That is why we stress that only statehood can free us from the Congress of the United States. Now, they didn't, however, delegate the budget process entirely to the district. Yes, you pass your budget, Madam Mayor, Council Chairman Mendelson, but the budget is not completely delegated and has to go through the appropriation process as if we were a federal agency. The entire federal process, taking up what the budget says and doing nothing about it, and waiting to see what the Senate does. So no part of the budget process was delegated. Now, what the city is doing, I want us all to understand. It is treating the budget as an ordinary bill, so it's going to submit the budget for 30 days before it implements the budget. And of course, at the end of that 30 days, it's going to do what it's never done before in more than 200 years of history. It's going to go ahead and implement its own budget. Now, I have indicated what's going to happen in an hour, but I do want to stress that we are by no means giving up in Congress with the almost certain passage of a bill to overturn the budget autonomy referendum this afternoon. That's almost a fait accompli, and we've understood that, and that's why we've already been at work in the Senate. We are going to continue to work with the Senate. We already have begun that work. We will pull out all the stops to make sure that whatever they do, we will make it more difficult for them to do it. That is why it was very important for me to travel down to the Wilson Building, to our own City Hall today, to thank Mayor Bowser and Chairman Mendelson and the assembled City Council, and of course, our Attorney General for standing firm in the face of pressure from people who have no right to exert pressure of any kind on your local budget. Thank you again very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman. So we can take some questions on the issue of budget autonomy. I will make myself available after that for additional questions. Yes, Tom.
Well, Mayor, Ms. Norton, if the Republican House approves this bill, it's going to be voted on today, and if the Senate approves it, is there any hope, expectation, or that the President himself will veto it or hold it up, or other than talk about the city and its restaurants?
The budget, the President has supported budget autonomy in his own budget. He has done so in virtually all of his budgets. So I expect that it would be vetoed if it came as a bill. I cannot tell you what would happen if it were part of an omnibus or a must-pass bill, but I can tell you at the moment it doesn't look like there'll be any omnibus. It looks like it's going to be a congressional resolution, and that probably wouldn't have anything attached to it. So I still hold out some hope that at least for some period of time, the District of Columbia will get to implement its own budget.
So I should just say, we've already, obviously the council will vote on the budget today. For our part on the executive, we are already implementing budget autonomy and how we transmitted the budget to the council in the first place. So we are well on the way. Yes, Martin.
Have you also spoken to the CFO about this? Because ultimately he's the one who has to start spending the money come October. Has he changed his mind on whether?
He hasn't indicated to me that he's changed his mind. I'll turn to Carl in a second. But it has always been his position that he needed a decision from a court of law. And when that came in, he indicated to us that he would not be seeking an appeal.
I think you said it all, Madam Mayor. Jeff DeWitt has been absolutely firm and consistent over the years. What Jeff DeWitt sought was a legal judgment from a competent court. He saw that judgment and he decided to not appeal. So we are all moving with the intent, and I'm sure that Jeff DeWitt feels this way, and that is to implement the Budget Autonomy Act.
Anything else?
Yesterday, Mr. Chairman, you kind of taunted Congress to arrest you over this issue, saying that you'd go ahead with passing the budget today. It'd be absurd for anyone to try to do that. Who on the stage right now? I mean, is that where things are headed potentially for arrest? Do you think that where do you take this as far as a protest? If Congress passes what they passed today, what visibly can you do to show that you are standing in opposition?
Well, the mayor has already escaped arrest once under threat of arrest. This time, the city is not operating as I believe it fully intended to do by itself. The city is under court order. The court said you must implement the budget autonomy referendum. Now, if Congress wants to change that, it can, of course, do so, but at the moment, I don't think the city, the CFO, or any of those associated with the budget have any alternative but to go ahead pursuant to the order of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. And may I say, this went to some federal courts. Now, the federal courts, the one that remanded this to the Superior Court, didn't tell us why. I think it is very significant that the Court of Appeals, instead of opining on this, the Federal Court of Appeals, said give it to the local court.
Sure do. Anything else?
Yes, on being arrested.
Well, this isn't like other issues with regard to statehood or local autonomy. We have a law, we have a court order. It's not for us to do civil disobedience. You don't do civil disobedience over the law that you support. What I had said yesterday that Aaron was referring to was, the congressman, more than one last week, said something about they were so concerned that I might be arrested. And at yesterday's press conference, I said, well, I really don't, I think that's just, that is so absurd, that idea, because we litigated this, and the court has said that this is the law. And so I used I invoked the image of, sure, put me in handcuffs while I'm holding the court decision. It just doesn't work. This is not about civil disobedience. We lawfully amended the Home Rule Act with the support of over 80% of the voters. We are complying with the law. It comes back to what I said at the beginning. Congress supports budget autonomy, or they don't support budget autonomy. Congress supports the district, or they don't.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Let me just acknowledge that we were also, I'm sorry, Senator, I didn't see you come in, by Senator Michael Brown. Please give him a round of applause and welcome. Thank you.